Dr. Larissa Kogutenko is the coordinator of the Water and Climate Program at Kazakh-German University's Center for Natural Resources and Sustainability. Her primary research interests are in Central Asian climate change and its effects on water resources and ecosystems. She has written and co-written a number of articles on glacier degradation in the Tien-Shan Mountains and other parts of Central Asia. Dr. Kogutenko will present a talk titled Country Climate Development Report, Recommendations for Water, Rangelands, and Croplands.
Thank you very much. I hope that my presentation will be on the screen sometime. At some point. Today I would like to present the work which we've done with, but that's not mine, unfortunately. With my colleagues, and this work was dedicated to climate development report. I think that you've already seen this report, which was presented by World Bank recently, on November last year, and we were a part of this group who helped them to develop it. So, and why it's actually important, because Kazakhstan already taken some of the commitment So Kazakhstan already takes some of the commitment on reduction of greenhouse gases on some level. So according to Paris Agreement, we are trying to reduce our greenhouse gas emission by 2030 by 15%. And it's also important that in this national development state contribution, which was presented by Kazakhstan, the main industries which was mentioned there is energy, agriculture, waste management, land use change, and forestry. So that is in general, so some of the spheres where we are trying to put some efforts on decreasing our emissions, or somehow to manage to help on sequestration of these greenhouse gases. And it's also interesting that Kazakhstan developed a special strategy on carbon neutrality of Kazakhstan by 2060. So, and the industries or the economy sectors which are mentioned there is on the energy, industrial process and products use, agriculture and forestry, and waste management. So there is not really a lot of on land use, and the coverage of these areas like really spread and really not really specific actually what actions will be taken in each particular sectors, what kind of recommendations or what kind of movement should be done in specific directions. So that is why we are trying to focus on three sectors, on water and on water, rangeland, and cropland. So why we focused on these areas? So that is a report which was that's some information which was developed by Institute of Economical Research, and they're trying. My apologies that this graphs this table in Russian, but I put some numbers and give a translation so that everyone could understand. So the first one is showing us the energy sector. The second is in the industrial process and recycling. The third one is agriculture, then land use and forestry, and the fifth one is waste. So what is interesting in this table that is that we could see that the sector of land use change, and the forestry in 1990s, actually there was not so much emission from this sector. There was even the sequestration of the greenhouse gases by this sector. So that sectors, all of the grass, all of the forestry which we had at that period, they were helping to take out the greenhouse gases from atmosphere, which is also important and could help us to understand how we could develop this sector. So, but if we check this sector later, we have really bad dynamics for 2000s. I do not really believe in this, like a little bit weird on these numbers. But still, we could see the increase in this sector. Even if we don't pay attention to 2000s, we see the increase on greenhouse emissions, even from land use. So even from the forestry, that is showing us that our forestry industry is not developed, that the amount of the forestry which we are losing, it is not enough to compensate on the greenhouse emission which is actually producing by degrading of this of the leaves and all of these green parts. So that is why it's really important to pay attention to this sector, to increase our sequestration potential in Kazakhstan, that we could reach our goals which we already put to ourselves in all of these international agreements, in all of the so we could really take these obligations which we put to ourselves. So it's really important to look to different directions. So in this report, what we were trying to do to review the existing research materials, which is actually existed in Kazakhstan on impact of climate change to different sectors, especially to three of the mentioned ones, and to check the risk and vulnerability assessment on different like how actually climate change impacts in social economy, what kind of threats we have in this sector, what kind of vulnerabilities, insecurity we might have during the climate change on different perspective by 2030, like in short term, or maybe in long term by 2060, when we hope to reach our carbon neutrality. And also we were trying to develop some recommendations for adaptation and mitigation in all of these sectors. So it's really important to understand actually how all of these sectors are connecting to each other, how they are codependent on each other. And at our first excellent presentation, we saw actually how water and energy connecting to each other. And it's not obvious to some of the people, but also how actually the water and croplands and rangelands are connected to each other. Because the rangelands, you just see, oh, that's somewhere outside of the villages, somewhere in the mountains where we have our cattle, where we have our cows. They are just going there and there is no need for any water. Actually, that is not true, because you need to provide the water to your cows who are going on these nice pastures, nice rangelands. So everything is connected. Even on the croplands, we always speak about irrigations, how much we are using for irrigations, and so on and so on. I will give some numbers. And also, when we speak, so I will speak a little bit about each of these parts. And when we speak about water resources, what we see in Kazakhstan. So Kazakhstan is unfortunately not so rich on water resources. And we are highly dependent on water resources from our neighbors, also from China, which we are speaking today. So we could see that on the rivers, like the total number of available water is around 100 cubic kilometers per year, which we have in Kazakhstan. And almost half of it, more than half of it, are coming from our neighbor countries. And China is one of the main country where we are getting our water by Irtysh River or Irtis River and Ilia River. So that is why it's really important. And also, if we check where we have like a dense populations, So the most dense population in Kazakhstan would be mostly in the mountain regions. It's the South Kazakhstan and Eastern Kazakhstan, a little bit more on the north, and that where our transboundary rivers are located, and especially the rivers which are coming from China. So we really have to speak with our neighbors, we have to negotiate with our neighbors on how much water we are getting from them. So of course there is a special agreements, there is a special negotiation courts where we are speaking, where we are discussing with all of our neighbors on how much each of us could get, but not always these agreements is really easy to reach, because all of the countries are thinking about their economical development for sure. So, I've already mentioned that the water is mostly, it's not, the third one, we do not have enough water, even for ourselves. And the second one, the water is distributed really unevenly. So most of the water we still have in the southern Kazakhstan and in eastern Kazakhstan. So, and that is why it's also impacting on how much we could produce, how much water we could use for different purposes, for different water users, and so on and so on. And the main users of water in Kazakhstan, big surprise, is agriculture. Of course, we are using our water to produce food for ourselves. And the main irrigated area are located again in southern and southeastern Kazakhstan, where we produce most of the food. And that is why it's connecting our water to our croplands and how it could be developed more. Also, what I wanted to mention here, that is a compilation of different sources of different forecasts for water resources changes in Kazakhstan. So, and most of them are actually dramatic. We could see that in all of our river basins, the number of water which we will be getting will be decreased by 2100. And even there is some possibilities that we might have slight increase in the mid of the century, because of the glacier melting and the amount which they could provide to us, but it's still not really enough and really depending on their on the river basin, because on Sirdarya and Balkhasha river basin, where we have a lot of glaciers and they will be melting more and more, we might have some increase of the water, but it also would create some other negative conditions, for example, as mud flows, as floods, and so on, during different periods. So it's also not really good. So we shouldn't be really happy even about that. So, but in general, if we take other river basins, we will have a dramatic decrease of our water resources. So what we have on our agriculture. So far we have almost 1.6 million hectares of irrigated land in Kazakhstan. So it's also depending on the locations. The biggest irrigated area or irrigable areas will be in southern Kazakhstan, southeast Kazakhstan, in east, and some of them will be in the northern, near to Karaganda in Astana city, where we have our most of our wheat area, where we're producing wheat. So, and there is a plan from the Ministry of Agriculture that this land will be increased by 2030. We are going to decrease this number twice, almost to 3 million hectares. So, and then we are raising the question, where we will get the water to irrigate all of that area. what we are going to do, what kind of technologies we are going to implement, where we'll get enough resources actually to provide. Okay, we have a lot of area, a lot of land which we potentially could use, but is it really so? Is it actually possible for us to use this area? That is really big question and big concern. So, and also if we check the pattern of the crops which we are producing, so most of them are really high water consumption crops and vegetables and plants. So we also have to think about the crops which we are producing, the pattern which we are producing, and about the amount of food which are actually produced in Kazakhstan. Is it enough? What we are doing with this food? We also had an example from our first presenter that for production of this food, for allocation of this food, then for processing of this food, then wasting of this food if we are not using it, we are still using some energy, we are using some human resources. For what purposes actually we are doing all of that? We really have to start to think rationally on what we are doing and how we are using the resources which are given to Kazakhstan. We have a lot of opportunities which maybe we do not manage so well as we wish. So about the rangelands, actually what is a picture about the rangelands? That is the example from 2019 on actually the condition of the rangelands and pastures in Kazakhstan, and we could see that the northern and southern Kazakhstan are not so bad. Eastern Kazakhstan also quite in a good condition, but it's also depending on the year. 2019 was not so dry, but if we check on western Kazakhstan, on southern western, the picture is totally changed. So there we have really degradable areas with rangelands, with pasture management. So most the biggest part of Kizilorda region, of Mangistau region, even in Atyrau region, we do not have enough of pastures. We do not have enough of rangelands which we could use for sustainable agriculture, for production. So that, of course, that is just an example from 2019. We need to check long-term perspectives, how it was changing. But in general, I could say that the picture is quite similar, even if we check long-term perspectives. So, and how it's actually impacting all of us. For that, we used an NG-GAIN source and check for vulnerability and security. And here we could say that the most vulnerable, again, will be our agricultural sectors. And agriculture capacity is one of the lowest. We could see the score that the vulnerability is the highest there. So we do not have enough water. Our temperature is increasing, which is also impacting all of the plants, all of the animals which we are growing, and that is giving a huge impact on what we are doing. So. And also we have on the water not really good numbers. On dam capacity, the score is 0 because it's not even possible to evaluate it, because evaluation of our dams hasn't been performed for quite a while, because when we speak about the water bodies, the waters belong to the Ministry of Natural Resources, Ecology and Geology. But when we speak about the constructions, and especially the dam constructions, the safety constructions, they belong to the Ministry of Emergency Situations. So there is some negotiations between them on how to manage, who is managing, who is making some reconstructions, who is doing what. But still, we have there is an example of you all know that Almaty is located in the area with a really high insecurity regarding the mud flows, and that is why we have a few dams on our rivers. And right now, not recently, it's still there is a construction in Big Almaty River, when we have our new dam which will protect the city. So from one point of view, that is great. So we have new construction which will help to secure the life in the city, what we'll get. But from the other hand, if we look to the environment, what kind of damage we created by the construction of this dam? What would be the consequences for the animals who was living in this territory? How many trees was cut down just to protect us? So, and then we have to negotiate, check costs and benefits, what we'll get from all of that. So there are a lot of vulnerabilities, and as well, I already mentioned, the biggest of them is on agriculture and water sector in Kazakhstan. So, and by the additional investigations, we came up with some of the recommendations. I didn't put a lot of information just to secure our timing, but for we divided our recommendation and give some recommendations with with the idea based on the cost and benefits analysis on investment potential till 2030 and on the sequestration potential, because we already mentioned at the beginning that there is a need for the better sequestration potential, the increase of this sequestration potential in Kazakhstan. Unfortunately, for water sector sequestration potential is not applicable, but still on some measures which are really needed. It's water conservation and capture, the creation of special infrastructure where we could save our water for the future usage, like during the summer period. There is a need for transboundary cooperation, the increase of basin council organization, the increase of the stakeholders' engagement, the increase of our economical understanding of our cooperation between countries, and so on and so on. And of course, there is a high need on monitoring and disaster risk reduction, especially in southern and eastern Kazakhstan and northern Kazakhstan, also for the flood protection. So on the investment potential, you could see here that there is some high potential on infrastructure development, but for the other parts, it's not so big. But at the same time, it doesn't really show that how important they are. They are really highly important, but maybe not so interesting for the investment, but it shouldn't scare us. So on a pasture management, there is three main recommendations, and it's improvement of pasture management, preservation of existing forests, and implementation of bioenergy in agro-industrial complexes. And most of these measures, they have high or medium sequestration potential, and at the same time they have really high and medium investment potential. So they would be really interesting in investment and actually really interested in improving of the situation. So we're better to invest in these measures to get some profits and at the same time to increase our sequestration potential. And regarding the cropland, we could say that the main three recommendations would be rational transition to organic farming and crop production, innovative greenhouse technologies, and the drip irrigation, which will be really also important and really potential. And all of these measures have a really high investment potential and medium and low sequestration potential, which is also quite good and quite interesting for us. So, and just to conclude, that in Kazakhstan we have really a lot of potential. We have some potential on sequestration, which would really help us to decrease our emission. It could become the additional step for our carbon neutrality in Kazakhstan, and by applying, there is a need actually also for an additional, of course, research in all of this direction, especially in an economical research on how actually it would benefit implementation of any of these measures, or maybe some other measures, how it would actually help us. And in general, just to, we have to raise, to increase the awareness raising about the climate change and the situation in our country, and then I hope we will get some good results. Okay, that would be it from my side for today.
Any questions for Dr. Kogutenko?
My name is Abazar. I'm coming from public policy background. In public policy, you have two simple measures: public policy actions and money. What funding? So, what about your measures? Do they have funding from the government? And number one. Number two, basically, all funding for any programs can be included in the budget only if it is included in the Kazakhstan Strategy 2050. So all these water issues are included. And you didn't mention one project, it's I think it's called Larissa. It's for about 5 years, 2020-25. It's about 100 billion tenge, $200 million to provide water to all villages and cities. So any updates on it?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. That is really important actually on how all of these measures are actually corresponding to the national strategy. That is correct. Without national policy support, we will not be able to achieve any of that. So some of these measures are already kind of partly included in the national strategy, depending on the different perspective on water, on agriculture, on pasture management. Some of them are included, but some of them could be an additional one. That is why we made this cost and benefit analysis actually to show to the government that it's important to pay attention to this. To these measures and to include them, to support them, to get some maybe small grants for farmers to implement it. And we really hope that for these kind of measures there would be also possible to get some green credits from different international organizations, which would also could support this kind of greening initiatives for the business. So that's why we hope that it would be possible to include some of them, especially on agriculture, on cropland. Most of them are included. Yes, these ones, most of them are already included on this state planning, but some of them, it would be good to include them additionally. Yeah, and we also, we already made the presentation for the ministry, for the Committee of Water, and we are planning to have a special meeting with them in March, where we also could present our results, that it would get better promotion and better, that the government could get better understanding of these processes. Thank you. Yes.
Hey there, love the presentation. Question, in China right now, there's they were the head of the Convention on Biodiversity recently. And they're talking a lot more about they're putting more money into and research into nature-based solutions. And I believe they want it. Do you guys know what a nature-based solutions
Yes.
are? The idea that you, like for an agriculture, like maybe you have agroforestry, that you don't till the land, that you make sure that you preserve the land and the soil so it does become a good sink. I mean, that's what you were talking about, NBS is the slogan now.
Yes.
But and China's evidently also starting to talk about, and I could send you an article on this, wanting to take their nature-based solutions on the Belt and Road. Something new on the Belt and Road. Who knew? I was curious, is there I mean, because you're basically, some of this you are talking about nature-based solutions.
Yes. So on nature-based solution, unfortunately, our government not so interested so far. But there is some interest on international organizations actually to increase these capacities. For example, on GIZ, German initiative here in Central Asia, there is a special project on Green Central Asia where they are connecting all Central Asian countries on climate and water initiatives, and they are, as part of their activities, they have nature-based solution implementation, but that's mostly like a pilot project so far. So, and also nature-based solutions are becoming more and more popular on uranium industry, or like on a polluted areas, so where they could plant some trees to increase the fertility of the soil. So it's mostly in this direction, but it's not, unfortunately, so many on a governmental level, unfortunately, so far. But we hope that it will get more and more popular.
Why is
Yes.
it so? Why our government is not interested?
Because nature-based solutions, they are taking longer time. Actually, to create to get the result, and government mostly are looking for short-term and quick reaction. Unfortunately, yeah. So that is the main answer. Yes.
So
Any
we
other?
definitely need a course in environmental diplomacy.
Yeah.
Yes, we need to have environmental diplomacy. So actually, we speak a lot about water diplomacy right now in Central Asia, but environmental diplomacy, it should be something new which we need to bring to Central Asia. Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.